Ladies and gentlemen, and others, hey, if you decide to identify otherwise, it's fine. Anyways, that's not relevant to the video at all. In today's video, can we fix it? We will be looking at Infernity. Perhaps one of my signature decks. Some people see it as my #1 deck. I respectfully disagree. I think I'm more of an RDA and Fortune Lady expert. But I do love any appreciation I get towards, well, my skills with Infernity. So, anyways, the last two waves of Infernity have been underwhelming at best. There have been a few decent cards, but in general Konami did a poor job supporting them. So in this video, I am showcasing you my 8 cards of Infernity support. 8 cards designed to make Infernity a better deck. And yeah, in the next video we will actually be playing this deck against 3 meta matchups if Dueling Book doesn't screw up my replays this time. So as you can see on your screen right now, I have 1 monster, 4 spell cards, or well, 1 main deck monster, 1 link monster, and 2 synchros. Now, starting off we have an effect monster, Infernity Doom Avenger. Since just retraining existing Infernity monsters, adding Doom in the name is something Konami likes to do. They also like to do is adding lazy, like, renders of the monster with some kind of Code Geass reference behind them, so I stayed true to Konami tradition and decided to include it in my own Infernity card as well. So this card here is Infernity Doom Avenger. Now if you were to ask me right now what's the one thing I want for Infernity, it's a better level 1 tutor. If I could just choose one card, a better level 1 tutor would be great. So honestly, having any kind of positive effect would be great, but I propose the following. You can discard this card. Add 1 Infernity monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand except itself. Not once per turn whatsoever. Now, I've had my console, I have a console that by the way checks my cards. Kind of discuss and debate if the first effect should have a once per turn, but I figured Archfiend can already search non-once per turn. If it did break the deck, well, Archfiend would be banned by now. It's not banned. This actually gives you a reason to play a high amount of monsters in Infernity. It might make a somewhat purist variant possible. Wildcat specifically wants Infernity monsters in your hand to discard itself, to discard it gets special summoned itself. So I figured, why not combine, you know, searching with a monster that can, you know, actually search other cards. Sounded like a great idea to me. And this theoretically can also add back the Mirage from your graveyard or one Archfiend if they decide to keep Archfiend limited. I don't know, it just seemed like a great design to me. Naturally, this card also has a graveyard effect, since, you know, more than your hero is bloated and cards no longer have one effect. If this card is in your graveyard, while you have no cards in your hand, to kind of keep the handless theme going, requiring no hand for the first effect wouldn't make sense, naturally. So if this card is in your grave, while you have no cards in your hand, you can banish another Infernity monster in your grave, and if you do a special summon this monster from your grave. This effect is a hard once per turn. So the idea behind is that it can easily be an extender piece. Get Nibiru'd or get negated, you can at least try to make some kind of play and on a half-assed board. Because Infernity is really weak against interruptions and I don't want to totally make them too unfair. So something like this sounded fair to me at least. So that's Infernity Doom Avenger. Now the first spell card is Infernity Reinforcements, including all the relevant characters from Team Satisfaction in the picture. I thought that was a little cool art thingy. So if you control an Infernity monster, get targeted monster, special summon an Infernity monster from your deck with a different level. Not requiring handless, you can actually, you know, try to start combos, get Sage from your deck, then use Sage effect to discard your entire hand. Yes, you could potentially argue that this also should have the handless effect, but if you're summoning something off of this, like Archfiend, if you don't have an empty hand, so like its effect will trigger, so meh. Figured this is fine to not have that restriction. However, it has a graveyard effect if you don't have a hand. If you have no cards in your hand, you can banish the card from the grave, send an Infernity monster from your deck to the graveyard. You can only use each effect once per turn. So this basically kind of mirrors Infernity Inferno, serving a similar purpose. Getting multiple monsters on the field, the link is related to this. I basically want Infernity to have in-art-style ways of getting monsters on the field. This is basically a monster you can set for Infernity by, well, special summoning a monster from your deck using the spell. Yeah, it just gives you an ability to actually handless combo without, well, needing to run too gimmicky stuff. And it has a nice graveyard effect to reward those that run cards like Infernity General that you wouldn't normally run. And it just makes it more possible to run a pure Infernity variant once again. The goal of most of these cards is to enable a more purish Infernity variant. Because right now, a mixed, weird, hybrid Infernity deck is sadly the best option. Next up we have Infernity Reborn. Very creative name, I know. Get target the Infernity monster that is banished or in your graveyard while you have no cards in your hand, special summon it. Get it back if something gets hand trapped or if you banish Mirage somewhere in a combo. Have an easy way to get it back. Well, you have, of course, it's also a grave effect. You can banish a card from your graveyard, and target the Infernity spell trap in your graveyard other than itself. Send it to your side of the field. You must naturally have no cards in your hand to use this effect. You can only use this effect once per turn. The revive effect, the first effect, is not a once per turn. Now, the reason for this is simple. In Infernity, we need revival spells. Right now, we're just randomly running cards that revive stuff for no good reason. Just gives it an ourselves way to do it. Keep launcher limited, you know. Theoretically, one could argue, well, you could just put launcher at 3 and do virtually the same. Launcher is a bit too ridiculous. I figured this card is a bit more fair. It enables you to go second a little bit better, you know, if they interrupt your plays, you can try to use this to, well, still make some kind of board. As well, the second effect just ensures you can do some fun stuff like activating launcher a second time, which kind of sounds broken, but in practice, even with all the support, deck wouldn't be that good. There's just too many hand traps and stuff in this game right now. Next up, we have Infernity Reborn. Field spell, because every deck in Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Needs a field spell, right? So when this card is activated, you can add one Infernity card from your deck to your hand. Once again, not requiring handless situation here. There is definitely a handless payoff on this card. However, this actually gives you somewhat consistent options like searching once again Sage to actually empty your hand. During your turn, will you have no cards in your hand, Infernity monsters you control or in your graveyard are unaffected by your opponent's card effects. So this specifically when you have no cards in your hand. Infernity will still be vulnerable against still, for example, Nibiru once you search a card for the Archfiend, for example. There's still definitely weak spots. This at least gives you some kind of fighting chance, you know? This kind of does what Suppression should have done, but even this isn't the perfect all-stop against hand traps, which, in all fairness, shouldn't exist in the first place, you know? If a deck is invulnerable to hand traps, what's the point of, well, hand traps being in the game, right? It just provides more power creep. This just makes it so that, at least the choke points are a bit more limited. And you can at least attempt to play around hand traps. It's, well, introduce more skill into the deck fairly, bluntly. So if an Infernity monster you control destroys a monster battle, you have no cards in your hand, you can inflict damage to your opponent for each Infernity monster you control, multiplied by 100. Now this burn damage isn't too relevant, but it definitely adds up, and it kind of, well, rewards you for having at least Infernity monster, or at least one on the field. Now you might think burn is that relevant, but if you have like 2 or 3 Infernity monsters, boom, 300. Attack a few times, well, it might add up and it's a nice extra bonus effect. Since you know Modern field spells do have 3 effects in general, I thought this was a cool kind of throwback to cards like Infernity Destroyer. It also gives you some kind of payback for the Doom Archfiend into 100 Ice, for example. And you can only activate 1 copy of this field spell per turn, naturally, to ensure you don't just do weird crazy loops. The final spell, Infernity Doom Fire Blast. Doom Fire Blast is the actual dub name of the Doom Dragon's effect. You also see like still frame of the monster attacking. So anyway, if you control an Infernity monster, you can destroy 1 monster on the field. Doesn't target because, well, quite frankly, why should it? If you have no cards in your hand, you can activate this card the turn it has been set. If you do, your opponent cannot activate the cards or effects response to this card's activation. Makes it spell speed 4. If you have no hands, so, you know, you can at least try to break certain boards. Also inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the attack of the destroyed monster. I mean, I decided not to include any kind of other restriction on this, like hard ones per turn, decided not to add a graveyard effect, which would be a bit too much. I think this could be a nice one-off or a card you could side in when going second. It sounds really strong on paper, but in practice I'm not even sure how many copies you would run if you would run this at all. It protects your Infernity monsters, so you can actually keep your negates up. It gives you a fighting chance going second. And just in general, I think it could be interesting, kind of a throwback in the effect, of course, to Infernity Doom Dragon. Yeah, usually spell speed 4 can be a bit nasty, but when you consider it's just a single destruction, it's not that bad. We already have Infernity Break, which we don't run at 3. Don't worry too much about this card. I think it's a cool one-off if you run it at all. Now we have the link. Of course, Infernity Doom Mirage. You could already see where this effect will be going. If this card is linked, right, so the link material should actually be 2 Dark Monsters. I forgot to add it on the card. I need to not forget this when, you know, when I actually go into the duel, I need to add that line, but yeah, the material should be 2 Dark Monsters. Not Fiend specifically, because even Infernity has stuff like Beetle, which isn't that Fiend. So if this card links summoned using at least 1 Infernity monster, While you have no cards in your hand, you send one Infernity monster from your deck to the graveyard for each of those monsters. So if you make it with 2 Infernity monsters, you can send 2 Infernity monsters from your deck to the grave. Fully enabling you to set up plays when playing a pure variant once again. Kind of replicating what Infernity Inferno should have done in the first place, but since the year 2022, it does it as not a trap. While you have no cards in your hand, you can target 2 Infernity monsters in your graveyard, tribute this card, and if you do special summon those targets, you can only use each effect of this card once per turn. So the second effect is basically just another copy of Mirage, aka Launcher. After once per turn, you can't just revive this card over and over again, it will do nothing for you. It might be a bit troublesome to give Infernity a link to a higher, since then you can easily just use multiple of these as link materials, but I figured not that big of a problem, probably. Likely. But yeah, this is just acts as some kind of Mirage. Basically, if you open up 2 Infernity monsters, you most likely have full combo. I think the deck deserves that. Otherwise, we're just stuck to playing stuff like Carabini, Curious, you know, got without Infernity, and I think that's a bit sad. Allow the deck to be played pure. I think that would be fun. Next up, we have Infernity Doom Necromancer, continuing the trend of a bad Gojias backdrop. It's just a retrain of Necromancer, I thought, you know, give the deck a level 4 Synchro, Arclight needs to be banned at some point, right? I think it will at least. So yeah, it requires a tuner plus 1 or more non-tuner monsters, get targeted up to 2 Infernity monsters in your grave or they're banished. Up to 1 each, show 1 Infernity in your grave and 1 in your banish. Well, you have no cards in your hand, special summon them. And then if this card is used for a Synchro summon where all materials were Infernity monsters, well, you have no cards in your hand. You can set 1 Infernity spell threat from your graveyard or deck to your side of the field. You can only use each effect once per turn. So a bit of an extender, encourages actually playing cards like Doomfire, you know. So you can actually use this earlier in the turn, then set it back and use it again, for example, when breaking boards. Recycle Launcher, because, well, who doesn't love recycling Launcher? Yes, actually, I did mispronounce that on purpose. Before people call me out. That was a bad joke. And yeah, just makes it so that you don't have to run 200 eyes to do your loops. Which, you know, in a way are cool, but is that something you really want to force the Infernity deck to do? This just makes everything happen faster, which means, in return, the Infernity turns will be less long. Like, that's also part of this design, you know? Part of the issue with Infernity is that turns take 10 minutes. By making things a bit more direct and making things happen faster, well, it just makes everything less convoluted and it just makes duels happen faster, which is beneficial for both parties. Now, of course, traditionally in the manga and in the anime, Infernity has some crazy stuff, so I decided to give them a crazy boss monster that isn't really practical, but just cool, because, well, quite frankly, I just like cool cards. So this card is called Infernity Doom General. It's a level 12 Synchro that specifically requires a tuner Infernity monster and 1 or more non-tuner Infernity monsters. While you have no cards in your hand, your opponent cannot select other monsters you control for attacks. This card cannot be tributed. Kaiju's looking at you. There's a reason this switches on this card. Don't worry. Neither player can draw any cards while you control this monster. Also, you cannot lose the duel while you control this card. Well, there's gotta be something later on in this effect that balances this. Trust me, there is. Also, removing draw from both players. Could this be meta in the past where people criticize this effect? I think it's fair game in a modern game where you have a lot of stupid effects. Yu-Gi-Oh! is no longer the balance the game it once was. Having a bit of a toxic payoff for such a monster is fair, especially when you keep reading. Players cannot activate counter effects while you have a card in their hand, you know, force both players to go handless. If this monster leaves the field, you lose the duel. Naturally, there we go, there's the payoff, or the negative to playing this card. If you're summoning this, you're confident, you're going all in. If you can out this monster, I lose. There's literally easy ways to out this card. If you're an idiot who summons an extra monster zone, then just link it off into that, or fuse it off into that on-side bracket card, for example. There's plenty of ways to deal with this card, just run it over in battle. But it's a tough-ass monster, which I thought would be cool for Infernity. Maybe it's a bit too much, but I think it fits the gimmicky nature of Infernity. So, yeah. This is my custom wave of Infernity support cards. Make sure to tune into the channel when I will actually use this in a duel. Which will probably be a crappy build, because, well, theory crafting Infernity isn't easy, especially with theoretical new cards. But I think I will try to create something cool. Will I actually run Doom General? I'm not sure. This card's mostly supposed to be somewhat of a meme. Might be a bit overtuned, but hey. Overtuned cool boss monsters. Oh well. Cool. Right. Anyways, hope you all enjoyed the video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more like this. I'll see you in the next one. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.